What's going on, podcast junkies? On this video, we're going to talk about the 5 personal benefits to starting a podcast. This might be one of my personal favorite topics and maybe the reason why I even started this channel. Aside from all the tech and gear that I love and have already done a few videos on and will do more on, the monetization, which I just recently did a video on, the personal benefits of starting a podcast really are my personal reasons for podcasting and one of the main drivers behind starting this Get Started podcasting channel. So we're going to start with number 1, improving communication skills. Starting a podcast requires individuals to communicate effectively and clearly, which can help to improve overall communication skills. In a world where we know that because of the last couple of years, a lot of people have been indoors, they've been secluded, they haven't been around large groups of people maybe like they had in the past, and those that hadn't in the past before that were really secluded and became more internalized, more of an introvert. And that's fine if that's you and that's your personality, but building these skills from podcasting can take your life to so many different directions, right? Just the skill of being able to look somebody in the eye. We tell our twins, our 8-year-olds this all the time, is that when you're talking to somebody, eye contact, right? It's very important that you know that they know that you're listening to them, you're paying attention, you're being purposeful with what you're trying to convey to them. And even at that young age, it's super important for them to get it in their heads that it's super important to understand, to communicate. I hope I'm doing a good job of that right now. Number 2, building confidence. Hosting a podcast can be a great way to build self-confidence and public speaking skills. That's another thing. A lot of people, I remember growing up and I would take speech, or I took whatever class that would have you go in front of the class and give some kind of speech or maybe even do a debate. And I would hear even at a young age that most people's biggest fear next to dying was actually being in front of a large audience or any audience and having to give a speech or having to talk. And I get it, I relate. But even early on for me, it was a little easier. I started podcasting young, but I wanted to do it. I love the idea of having a microphone, even before having cameras around, and just talking to somebody. And if people were listening, I really didn't mind because I was genuinely interested in the conversation I was trying to have with this person. I remember one, for instance, probably 2012, 13, time I was in downtown Houston, and because of Twitter, I got to connect with somebody who was running for a political office, and I was interested in what they were doing. They run for Congress in another state, happened to be in Houston doing some sort of, whatever, pop-up campaign, something, stop. And I shot him a message. I shot him a tweet about connecting. He shot me a message, a DM, and we connected and said, hey, let's do something downtown. I tweeted it out. I got a couple of people that followed me and were into podcasts and were listening to the similar shows at the time to go. And it was at a wine bar, and we had wine, and everybody kind of mingled. And then we did a podcast for about, it might have been 30 minutes to an hour on my Zoom, which I've reviewed and talked about why it's so important and easy to use, and it should be a must in your toolbox. And we just had microphones, we were podcasting, asked questions, people were there listening. It was like a live podcast. I was probably like 22 at the time, maybe 23. And that wouldn't have happened had I said, oh, I'm too scared to go in front of an audience or to be in front of a crowd of people to ask questions, and talk to somebody. You're usually doing it anyway at a restaurant. You're doing it when you're trying to tell a story with your friends. It is a little weird when it's strangers or somebody you don't really know, but it's very important. Number 3, expressing creativity. Podcasting allows individuals to express their own thoughts, ideas, and creativity, which can be very fulfilling. That's true. When I first started doing this, and I grew up in, the middle of nowhere, USA, small town, great. I love it. I'm glad that I grew up in that environment, but there weren't a lot of other creative people, for instance. There weren't people that were trying to share their thoughts or their skills of any kind of technical thing or gaming or media or digital stuff, which I grew up with cattle and hay and all that kind of stuff, fence building, but I was also a tech junkie. I love technology and video games and media, and that's where I am now. And if you have a podcast, you can do more of that because you're basically an authority. You can reach out to people in whatever field of interest that you have and interview them and talk to them and get their thoughts and expertise and then build an audience around that. And I think expressing that creativity of even just conversations is super important. It's an art to be able to interview somebody. It's an art to do this. I've had other failed YouTube channels because talking to a microphone and doing a podcast with somebody, let's just pretend I'm interviewing them, or even if it's a group of people, is totally different than standing or sitting in front of a camera and trying to make YouTube videos and make that entertaining and interesting and something where you can get a high retention rate and views and all that other stuff. So it's a skill for sure. Number 4 is connecting with others. Starting a podcast can be a great way to connect with others who share similar interests or experiences. Very true. I just gave the example of these Twitter followers that I had early on. We're listening to the same shows. We're into politics at the time as well, and just wanted to be there. So we went, drank some wine, had conversations, and a lot of those people I still talk to this day. This is over a decade ago. One of them is actually my best friend now. He's one of the few people who will do Friendsgiving together. We'll arrange a weekend to have couples night, and him and his girl come over, and we'll have dinner, or we'll go out or whatever. And that all came from a random series of interactions on Twitter with him and a bunch of other people. And he was also at this event that we did downtown early on. And it's crazy to think about, but you never know who you're going to meet. You never know what kind of relationship you're going to build when you do something like this. Lastly, number 5, establishing yourself as an expert. I also love this one. Hosting a podcast on a specific topic can help establish an individual as an expert in that field, which can be beneficial for personal and professional growth. I love listening to shows where the person is so smart, like for instance, Dr. Huberman, you got Dr. Rhonda Patrick, all kinds of people, Lane Norton. I know there's very specific to fitness and health or whatever, but I love people that nerd out. We talk about it all the time on the other shows I produce, that when you know somebody that loves to nerd out on whatever, for instance, I love nerding out about podcasting, it makes you feel a certain way. It's like, wow, these are my people, this is my tribe, my community, right? So establishing yourself as an expert and then being able to elicit that response from somebody else is super fulfilling, and I think rewarding for you if you can become an authority in a space. For me, when you want to be an interviewer, you have to get so lucky, have a lot of, put in a lot of work, put in a lot of hours, but then just come across the right people, the right instances where you're prepared to take advantage of the luck that might come your way, which some might say I have. Having the technical know-how, having the experience of also being able to ping pong conversations or conduct interviews are all skills that were developed over the last decade of doing this. And you could say I'm an authority to some degree in a variety of ways when it comes to all that stuff. But if you're listening to this right now and you're a master musician or a business person or whatever, a parent, even a teacher, you better go in on it. We have people in our Discord, which I have said, I started the year saying, if you don't start a podcast this year, you're straight up effing up. You're missing out. You're missing your opportunity, and you don't know if you're going to have the same ability to have the freedom of time, maybe because you're single, you don't have a responsibility like a family or whatever, or many things can happen later on. If you want to do it now, do it now. If you guys want more tips, watch this video. If you guys want to learn about monetization, you can watch this video as well. See you guys on the next one. And if you've started a show, drop it in the comments. I want to listen to it. I want to know what it's about. See ya.